set your drop cloth, dip your brush, and hide the caulk gun from the new guy. I'm Brandon Miller, and this is the first episode of Two Coats Deep. Today we have a super special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, John Macfarland.
What's going on, Brandon?
Dude, thank you so much for being on here. It's honestly an honor to have you. I've known you for a while now, and it's pretty cool to be able to get a little bit more of your story. I know you've been on a lot of different podcasts, but today I really want to dig into you and kind of what got you started and where you're heading. So
yeah, it'll be we'll have a good time.
Yeah, for sure. So go ahead and tell anybody who doesn't know you, who are you and why'd you start your company?
Sure. So John Macfarland, husband to Aaron. We've been together for 27 years dating. We've been married for 21 now, 21 in June. We have 4 kids, so I think that's who I am first and foremost. Obviously, being with her that long, I was doing that before I was painting, so I think it's critical to mention. I kind of fell into painting. Some people have heard this story very interestingly enough, part-time job. My older brother was a live-in manager of a very small apartment complex in his early 20s, got free rent, had painters smoking pot in a unit, and called my dad when I was 17, 16 years old and said, "Hey, Dad, I need a hand. I got to get this place painted. I have people moving in Monday." I think it was like a Friday or Saturday. And so it was, get off the couch, you're going to go learn something. My dad was always handy, even though he was in the schools as a principal and teacher administrator. And so I did that for about a year and a half through my last part of high school, painting apartments very poorly. I did a bad job and got frankly paid too much to do it. So that's the origin story right there.
So just like a lot of apartment painters, yeah?
Yeah, just like a lot of apartment painters. When I graduated high school, I got a job for a guy, a one-man show, kind of typical painting contractor, very solid craftsman, not a great business owner. He paid me too much money as well, kind of blew up my ego a little bit. I was his top guy when he got to 2 or 3 people. I was his most dependable employee at 18 years old. And so I did that 2 summers going to college, and then I switched and got my builder's license and went out on my own and dropped out of college my 3rd year in. So
interesting. And then you did a lot of custom woodwork and all that kind of stuff. You were more than just a painter.
Yeah,
first, right?
for sure. So I've been a licensed builder since 2005. And when the company started, we didn't say no to hardly a project. I mean, if someone needed a roof, we did a roof. If they needed a basement finished, we finished their basement. And when I had my second kid in 2013, was kind of a come to Jesus moment. I had a really good business coach at that time who was professionalizing me and my mindset and said, "Hey, I know this income sounds really good, but you're not making $1 doing this remodeling stuff and you are the bottleneck. Do you want to do the remodeling or do you want to grow a business?" So we kind of peeled back a lot of the construction stuff at that point and really focused on painting and painting adjacent stuff like trim replacement, some trim installation inside a home. And, that was critical to allow our business to really grow and then develop some processes that make this the 100-person outfit we are today.
That's crazy. So you've almost doubled since 2004 with how many people you have in your company then, right?
Oh, since we've doubled.
I mean, 2024. My apologies.
No, not quite 24. I'd say 23. Yeah, we doubled since 23. COVID was good to us in the state of Michigan generally, and kind of a luxury trade that's like a luxury item of painting cabinets grew through us through COVID like huge, and people had an extra few $1,000s, and in our experience, a lot of them spent it on home projects that were $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, which is our average ticket. So.
Dude, how cool. So removing a lot of the work that was generating most of your revenue actually made you more profitable is kind of what I'm hearing, right?
For sure more profitable. Even in that first 12 months, there was more net income than there was, and I cut it in half. Like half of our revenue was finished basements, kitchens, bathroom remodel. We would do a dozen of those a year. So.
And was that kind of a big ego check for you? Because
it was. I'll tell you, if I didn't have the second kid and wasn't busy at home, I don't know that I would have made that choice. So the choice really was family over finances. It ended up working out for the best because getting rid of that type of work for where I was at being a bottleneck. But thankfully, we had that second child, and it was important for me to be home and be present at dinner and not bring work home. And I didn't work weekends very much before that, but I was not going to work weekends after that. So, chicken or the egg, the family kind of was probably the little bit of gasoline I needed to go with the business coach's recommendation of, I think it's time to get rid of this stuff. So.
Family over finances. I don't think I've actually heard that one before.
So
That's
there you
pretty
go,
deep. So
trademark it.
so how did you implement that at home, not just in your business? So you said family over finances. So yeah, you were at home more, but how did you actually show up at home more?
Yeah, so there's a picture of my daughter who is almost 15. And at the time, it didn't mean that much to me. It just, I was spending time with her. She was probably about a month old, 2 months old. And I'm typing a quote at the kitchen table. It wasn't real late. It was probably 5:30, 6 o'clock p.m. But I'm wearing clothes that I wore in the field. And I was doing a roof at like a really low end rental property in Detroit for a good client of ours. But this was like not a great neighborhood, not a great project, not great margins. And I was physically tearing off and putting down those shingles on that June day. And the picture stuck with me. And so when we started to kind of move things around, because now we have kids and our home is changing, right? We're outfitting rooms. I don't have a home computer that I work off of. I don't have a computer at my house, and I haven't since my daughter was born. So for 15 years, I don't come home and get on a laptop or get on a desktop because I don't own one there. Um, that's been a cultural tenet of me, even way back in the day before kids, kind of work hard, play hard, but setting those boundaries where like when I'm home, and when I'm at work, I'm work. It was critically important for me. And everyone in my company shares that belief. And one of the only things that I get irritated about with my staff is if they're texting each other off hours, that's work related stuff, because it usually means there's some drop in communication. You didn't have a job scheduled correctly. You're moving pieces last minute. You didn't plan on weather, and that stuff can happen at 7:30 a.m. It doesn't have to happen in someone's dinner hour with their family. So we're still a really big work hard, play hard. And I think I like institutionalizing things by just making it so it's impossible for me to do that. Not having a home office makes it really easy for me not to work. You know, if I have an emergency, I'm only 3 miles from my office. I can go in there if I need to. But it really puts some distance from that for me too. And I try my best to stay off my phone and things like that. It's certainly a little more challenging now than it was 15 years ago. But I do a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, it kind of always blows my mind how you always respond.
Yeah.
I imagine you get a million texts and stuff, and somehow you still find a way to, prioritize family, friends, and business. It's admirable.
Yeah, I mean, and my wife's the oldest of her family. I'm kind of the oldest of my father's second marriage, right? My mom's child, but he was married before. And so we both take on a role of kind of being the oldest and the center points of families. So we're the host for Thanksgiving. We host Christmas. We do all these events. We have friends over every couple of weeks in the summer to barbecue and hang out. And that's critically important that we're kind of that house that people know. Like if there's nothing going on, we can go over there. You know, in 5 minutes, we can prep for a party of 40, 50 people and not think twice about it. And when we redid our house, about 11 years ago, we designed it like literally by hand with that in mind, that it's going to have a big patio. It's going to have an open concept. It's going to have places for kids to kind of get out of the way and go hang out. And it's come to fruition.
So literally not only the glue for your company, even though like I know you don't have a whole lot of roles in your company anymore, but you're still the glue that sticks everything together, but you do that with your family too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little arrogant to say, but I think with our friends and family, you know, my wife and I are kind of the drivers. We're the planners of a lot of the vacations and trips and camping trips and stuff. And I like that role. And to your point of being available, I've worked really hard and I got really great people at work that I've offloaded in defined roles. So like the day-to-day Macfarland painting stuff, I don't have to have my hands in any of it. You know, that's theirs to own, and they would rather have me out of the way. And then that frees up some capacity for, you know, the personal stuff, the family stuff, the big picture business stuff. And I think that's where a lot of people get, you know, drowned by is they don't ever offload those duties and tasks in a designed way. They might offload a task because they're overloaded, but there's no structure with how someone's supposed to do that. And I spend a lot of time orchestrating how those things can be done by others.
And with that being said, if you had to go back and tell yourself to offload something sooner, what would it have been?
Oh God. So my first hire was an office administrator before it was sales. And I was probably 2 years late doing that. You know, I felt like I couldn't afford that person. They're not generating income. They're not a painter. They're not a salesperson. That would have been critical. And same message for sales. I should have got a salesperson another couple of years earlier than I did too. But the thing that was hardest for me to get, so I had an office staff, I had two salespeople, and I was still doing a lot of PM stuff because I love that aspect of the company. It's the root of the company. And it wasn't that I didn't trust people or didn't have good people. I just struggled not being around. I felt like I was a little bit of a fake and a phony if I didn't, show up on job sites and make sure everyone was cared for and done well. And then now if I show up on job sites, everyone thinks something's wrong,
Something I heard on one of a different podcast that you were on is you were talking about how somebody called off and you ended up going with that crew to a job site, and the homeowner was just through the moon, and this young guy that was with you was like, wow, this is why we are the best. So how do you like emulate that throughout everyone without being able to go to those jobs? Do you let that story seep through your company, or
There's some of them. I mean, they've kind of become some lore, right, around the company of what we did back in the day. But everyone has seen me. If there's a problem somewhere, I'm just stopping what I'm doing and going. I'm not calling a client to sort through it. So that's my expectation. If someone's unhappy with something, great example. We had a client with some drywall repair, stress cracks. We repaired them. They came back. Customer called. It's only been a month. What's going on with this? And we said, hey, we can't really solve stress cracks, but let me see what's going on with it. And walked into the house, and I could tell that they removed walls. And my first question was, were you here? Did you own this place when these walls got removed? And they're like, well, yeah, we had a builder who said this was fine. And so I had to explain to them home construction and how that they had taken out bearing walls and there was no fix for this besides to put them back up, which they didn't want to do. And the young PM, Nick, who you met the other night, was there, pretty green at this point. And he was kind of avoiding going, saying, I'll talk to her on the phone. And I said, no, we're going to call and we're just going to show up. That customer felt totally different, me explaining that, because I saw pictures in her file. I could have explained it on the phone and I would have been correct, but she wouldn't have received it the same way. So it's like pull the Band-Aid, show up and go. You're not going to defer work by trying to do it remote or skate. Sometimes you just meet it head on and it's received better. And then we're blessed now. I have a lot of really key people in leadership positions that emulate our culture of like close the loop. We have 12 tenets of culture. We go through them every single month. We start every team meeting, every theme. There's 20 signs around the office about them. And they're not just signs, like we really believe those. And I wasn't part of drafting those 12. Part of my cultural handoff was to have Danielle, who's my go-to office manager, have her set up a team from operations and sales in the front office, get a mix of people and say, what are our 12 values that makes Macfarland Painting different or what we believe to be, one of the best. And there's a couple that if I wrote the list probably wouldn't have been on there, but giving up a little bit of that cultural identity when you get close to 100 people is critical because it's exhausting to have everything run through me, and it's not what they want either. So
I can't even imagine 100 people. That's a
yeah,
lot. I'd love to switch up gears a little bit
sure.
here. So there's something that's always been top of mind when I think about you. You do some crazy stuff, man. I mean, your whole team was talking about like when you go on this one winter trip, they don't know if it's going to be like the last time they see you, so they all need to say goodbyes. Like, what makes you so adventurous, and like what makes you want to go do these things? And
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, on some level, I've always been that way. I've had several broken bones, pulled out teeth through tubing incidents and four-wheeling incidents. The last one, this last winter, I did break my nose. Still got a little scar in there from a snowmobiling accident. 2 years before that to the day, I was in a pretty bad accident, broke ribs, dislocated shoulder, broken collarbone, was really banged up. Much to my wife's chagrin, as my mom used to say, that was her favorite word. Um, and I think I'm such a go-to dependable rock for people that I need a little bit of a reminder that I'm not just infallible that way. And I am human and have flaws and can be hurt and damaged and chase a little bit of that adrenaline. I think I've been that way since I was a kid and I just haven't grown out of it, I guess.
I love it. Have you ever thought about doing that like Vegas chop? Like you could ride around in the helicopter and shoot the
So
machine
we
gun.
looked at that 4 years ago for my 40th birthday party, and it ended up just being cost prohibitive for the group of guys I wanted to take. It's incredibly expensive for 15 or 30 minutes, but yeah, that is right up my alley.
Yeah, that seems like
Yeah.
something you do. What's the craziest thing that you have done in your opinion?
Oh gosh, the craziest thing that I've done. I mean, adventure stuff, I don't know. I bought a house at 20 years old and had no business buying a first house. And I made an offer on what I wanted my rent payment to be or my mortgage to be. I worked the math backwards with my father and said, I want all my expenses to be $700. So I'm offering 100,000 on this house. They were asking like 135, and they actually took it because I was a young kid who knew nothing and was just, I threw out a flyer out there and said, "Yeah, I can afford 700. I'll get a roommate." This is 2002 or three, and it worked out really well. And I had no business owning a home.
That's that
before 21 years old.
that's crazy. So you've done all this like adventurous stuff, and the craziest thing you've done is bought a home early.
Yeah, because I think if I mean, certainly you could die, but I don't do generally things that are quite to that level. But broken bones heal and things like that, and scars are nice little memories. So I think something that would have been more costly in terms of crazy is being financially irresponsible. But I told this to young guys and girls I got at work, like it forced me to grow the hell up. I
Amen.
had, and same thing when I bought my first new truck that honestly was a year and a half after the house. I had no business buying a brand new F-350 at 22, 23 years old, diesel, the works. Um, but I never missed a payment because it wasn't an option, and so I think you put yourself in those situations where you have this outside accountability and at critical points in your life. I think getting married is one, having kids is certainly another. Buying a building for the business was one that's like, we're putting down how much money on this? The driveway alone at our building was $300,000 just for the parking lot redo.
No big deal.
No big deal. 3 times my first house, right? I spent 3 times that on a parking lot. And I think if you, same thing like the business, if you institutionalize an appropriate amount of pressure, the right people will succeed. They'll find ways to win. It kind of keeps you focused. If it's too easy, I don't think I'd enjoy it.
Yeah, and speaking of lore, when I was with some of your project managers, yeah, I think it's Leonardo DiCaprio. It's like Revenant. Is that the name of that movie where he
Mm,
fights the bear?
yeah.
Yeah, I heard that was actually based on you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. You're hanging out with the wrong guys.
so with that being said, John McFarland thinks buying his first house was crazier than hand fighting a bear.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know.
On Two Codes Deep, you heard it.
Two coats deep. Two coats deep. So let's go ahead and get into some more business like savvy stuff.
Mm,
As far as where you are now, like how did you make the leap from I believe you bought a whole nother company. So like how did
mhm.
you make that leap to buy that company? Because I imagine that was pretty scary too. You don't know what involves with
It,
that.
it was scary, and it was a little reckless because I did it just and had the deal kind of finalized about a month before my CFO started. That's a transaction that would be best served to be run through somebody with their level of experience, not mine. And I did that because the individual that owned the company, Lauren, is somebody that I vibed with. I really liked and admired her ability to be fearless and sell anything. Where she lacked, I feel like we're very strong as a business on some structure type stuff and some operational organization things. The unsexy SOP stuff we do pretty well. And she's like, I'm going to figure it out on the way there type of person. So personally, we get along really, really well. I thought also for the company, we'd gotten a little stale, a little blue blood, and it was time to kind of inject some like, let's just figure this shit out type of thing. And it's been that. I mean, there's some hiccups and some hurdles and learning curve that we both weren't expecting, but right now the team out there is fantastic. They're killing it. They're doing really good. They're bought in culturally, and Lauren is in our top 2 or 3 salespeople every single month. So,
Wow.
wild win, but I was certainly fishing out of my water when I was making that offer and going through that paperwork and due diligence, and it was a learning curve for sure.
So on the next buy, what are you really looking for? Because I know you're not done yet.
I'm not done, although I'll tell you, I think part of what might be easier would be to buy a company that's a little different than what we do, and bring some of our systems into that. Carpet cleaning is one I've targeted. HVAC, from a service side, I think would be really cool. I think our process, because we do about 45 to 50 jobs a week. So we're very low average job size, high turnover, high client touches, but more than like a carpet cleaner, right? And so I think some of our automations and systems and office structure would take a carpet cleaner that's a couple person show and probably take them to 10 people in about the first 12 months. And it'd be a nice little complimentary, add on to our paint packages. We leave a home, we're giving them half off carpet cleaner, things like that. So I think I'm targeting, or at least starting to float the ideas out there a little bit about a business that's slightly different than what we do. I don't know that my next, acquisition would be another painting company.
Gotcha. And I kind of got the vibe that you're almost like the McDonald's of painting, with wanting to own the real estate underneath the companies,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's a big thing for my family. That's estate type of wealth. That building has appreciated almost 100% in 3 years. So I have value and equity in there for it that I could take out. So that's setting my family up different than the paint company. Even in our paint company, I mean, there's months that we lose money, and I don't want to be hitched to that like a job. If I'm gonna, that's the kind of the vehicle to grow this estate. You know, I have 4 kids. I have no idea what they're going to be into. I don't know that they're going to want to take over this business. And by that time, the business is, you know, even 5 years ago is outclassed, you know, a 22-year-old's ability to come in with nepotism and take this over. They're not getting that from me. So I'll fight that battle with them in a few years. But if they want to be involved in the company, they're going to start off at the bottom of the totem pole. They're going to earn their way up. They're going to learn it. And they might have a buy-in in our family side that's different than their paycheck that they make in a 40, 50 hours of working, power washing homes at 17 years old. And it's interesting because even 10 years ago, my vision was to have this company that my kids, if they wanted to, could work into, and they take it to the next level. But we've outpaced that. It's not reasonable for a young person to take that over now. You know, we have seasoned professionals that are young enough. My CFO just turned 40. So when the kids are going to be in the mix, he's still of working age. I'm not looking to bring them in and set them at the table without earning it. So that's going to be a whole nother journey for sure.
That makes me wonder, like, when one of them or however many do work through, like, do you think the company culture will change a little bit, like, when they do take that
It
steer?
terrifies me. You know, it terrifies me because I'm not big on giving things that aren't earned. If they're my kids, they probably have it worse than my employees. I probably give a free pass and an easier route to all of my staff than I do my own children. I'm pretty hard on them. So yeah, no, that's terrifying. Now, the nice thing is I have a couple mentors who have gone through this that are in their second generation and one that's in their third generation. And I'm already starting to kind of pick their brain because I think that to have that go smooth and not ruin my life's work, so to speak, it's got to be really well thought out and orchestrated. This is not a decision to map out in 1 or 2 years. I think it takes 10 years to really think about how we would want this to go.
Yeah, I wonder how, like, the competitiveness between them if multiple try to come in.
And one of these mentors has 4 kids that are all right about my age. So 4 adults, all with families, busy people. And he did it correct. He forced all kids to go to college. And I don't know that that's correct in today's, continued education in the college world. That's a whole nother podcast, my opinion on higher education. But he forced buy-in. Then he separated the company into 2 segments. They do screen printing and embroidery things, and then they do like the promotional marketing. So they kind of grew the company into 2 segments. Getting the kids involved caused them to like wildly grow the business, right? Because now there's 4 more minds at work, and I believe they have another partner or 2 in the mix. And they did it right, and they still eat dinners together on Sunday. They're Italian family, very old school. That's critical to maintain that. I don't want 2 of my kids bought in and then 2 disenfranchised by it. That's a failure. So, if they want in, I have to orchestrate a way to make that possible in some regard. And that's going to take some time.
Oh, I love that. And so you and your brother used to work together. How'd that journey go?
That ended terribly. My brother, both my brothers, younger brothers, worked with me for a minute. Chris, the youngest, just really summer job, for a couple of years, wasn't too intense. But Dave was in and was really, functionally kind of like a partner of mine until 2015, 14, 2014. We had the new office admin. Dave would do sales. We kind of ran a vertical business unit now is what we would call it. He would sell jobs and he would PM jobs. And he was upset. He lived out by Cass Lake, had a place on the canal and a boat out there. And he was upset that our first office admin was booking estimates whenever she felt like the schedule was available. We got an argument a couple times about it on the phone. We got an argument about it in person. We had a blow up on the phone where I said, if she books my effing calendar, she's going to book yours and you're just going to deal with it. He had a disproportionate amount of estimates at 3 o'clock, very close to his house, I felt. I don't know if that was really with intent, but I felt like he's setting himself to be off at 4 and be close to home in the summer when I wasn't off till 5 or 5:30. So there was some resentment in that, but he wasn't a partner. He was just an employee, compensated well and taken well care of, but didn't have, ownership. And, we got into it on the phone as he was pulling back into the shop. He very famously, and Dave's 6'3", probably 270 right now, flipped over a desk and a credenza and threw his credit cards on the desk to Colleen, our first office admin, and said, I'm effing done. I'm out of here. So there was a couple awkward family barbecues at mom and dad's for a minute when that got itself worked out. He's doing great. He's owning a very successful real estate group right now, and it's definitely it's a later start in the day. He's not a morning guy. Later go in the evening. He's a very good people person, and we joke now, but it was pretty hairy for a while.
Have you ever flipped over a table just as a joke for him?
I've not flipped over a table for him. I've had similar in a younger John Macfarland phase of my life. I've had some similar freakouts at work. There, you talk about lore, and Danielle, my office manager, her husband worked for me for kind of two stints. He was, he's a younger guy. He's 6, 7 years younger than me, and coming out of 6, 7. That's old. You know
My
that.
bad, my bad.
Your son Eli will tell you that's out, Dad.
Yeah.
And I famously, there was a little bit of spilled paint in our trailer. I mean, like a little bit of spilled paint in the trailer.
no.
I called him out of the house. I was screaming from the street to come out here. He came out and I threw an entire 5-gallon bucket of mud and hit him right in the face, and then blew the bucket of mud up, and he fell back out of the trailer, and then screamed at him to clean this shit up. And I walked inside. That was certainly in my mid to late 20s. So I was a different human then. But, some of the people people have been with me 14 years, 15 years, and they've seen kind of this maturation of like, in the field, hard edge, get stuff done, John, to this very soft, passive, PC looking, business owner. But we have too much to lose. I can't behave that way. Back in the day, they could sue me for my trailer or something. I'd lose that. No big deal. The stakes are a little higher now, and it's caused me to behave much better. So
Could you imagine throwing that tub of mud today?
no, and I can't imagine what my reaction would be if one of my other managers did that to a summer employee. I think I would kill him. But that was just a Tuesday back in the day.
Oh man, we're getting deep. I gotta get this. Oh my gosh, I gotta join up with the Macfarland.
There you go.
Here we go. My gosh, yeah, I couldn't go today without wearing the green, and I mean Macfarland green, right?
Yep.
So, man, that's a pretty intense story. Is that your biggest freak out, you think?
No, not even close.
Could you even tell us your biggest freak out?
I don't know what's biggest. I had one where we were cutting in can lights on a 24-foot high ceiling in Northville, and the can light holes weren't matching up just right for the drywall, 16-foot material, and 3 of us on the scaffolding putting it up. And I still have a nice scar on my hand here. One of my guys jammed a utility knife into my hand as we were trying to hold this up, and I grabbed the sheet and literally just tomahawked it off the scaffolding and shook the whole scaffolding, almost took it over, and just blew this up. And looked down, and the homeowner sitting in the other part of her house just looking in shock and awe. I was young for that. Most of these I can say I was young. We had a guy who was convinced that his house was painted, what did we do? It was a burgundy. We painted it forest green, his trim. He was convinced he had thin spots on his upper soffits. And we went in the back, and he starts calling one of our guys a fat fuck. And he's, saying, I know he stepped on this downspout that was like in pachysanther, like buried in ground cover.
Sheesh.
I'm like, hey man, we'll go get a new one. I don't know if we did or didn't, it's got like dirt in it. So I don't think we did, but it's a couple bucks. I got some going to Home Depot right now. And, so then we're doing the walk around. He's convinced that soffit is like thin. So I go up there. I said, no, it's just a shadow. I know what you're saying. It looks kind of weirdly brown, like it's shaded. I go up there and I touch it. And I said, do you see how that's like the paint went away? He said, well, yeah, I saw that, but maybe you did paint it, but it's thin. So I get down off the ladder. I said, a minute ago, you're telling me that green is red, and now you're telling me you can see it so well that you can tell it's thin from 30 feet, huh? That guy lost his mind, and we almost went to blows. Not my best moment. Told me that he was going to, mail me a check, and this is way before I took credit cards. And I said, I don't think so. You're going to pay this like now. Came out, handed us the check. Then he took off, kind of all in a huff as we're loading things up. Well, the neighbor comes over and tells me that this guy's been committed. He lives with his mother. The guy was probably 40 years old, and he's had problems with all the neighbors. The cops have been called, and the guy that walks over to me tells me he paints and did one job for them 5 years ago and won't talk to them again. And he goes, I saw the whole thing. I was getting ready to call the cops because you were in the right, and I just want to know you had your back. And this is before cell phones had cameras, right? I think I had a Nokia brick at this point. And so that was definitely the closest nearly physical altercation, with a client that was off his office rocker, and I certainly provoked it. I didn't do my job to diffuse it. And I've had other small ones, where stuff wasn't cut right, and I've thrown 1x6 off of a roof, broken tools and temper tantrums that I've had. Never at stuff that people did incorrect. I think I was even immature. John was a pretty good guy to work for, but if I made a mistake on a cut, you can bet I was breaking that piece over my leg and throwing it down on the ground.
Just
So
pissed.
just mad, like what, and I never held anyone to that same standard. If people made mistakes, I was probably one of the more compassionate. Hey, it's not a big deal. We can go get material. That was our last piece of that, and we're totally screwed. But we'll go get another one. It's okay, Johnny. If I was off a little bit, even it could have been cocked, I probably broke it over my knee and threw it on the ground. So
That's hilarious. The guy who taught me how to paint kind of reminds me a little bit of that.
yeah.
And one day we were going into work, and he's like, "All right, I need 100% today, 100%." I was like, "I'll give you 120." And the whole day I fucked everything up. The whole day I fucked up cuts. I splooged caulk everywhere, just not good. We get back on the way in the van, I had to sit in the back with all the tools, and he sat up there alone. That's pretty funny. And he goes, 120, huh? So still to this day, he calls me 120.
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes slow down to speed up is still the MO. You know what I mean? Just do a little more methodical, take the stress out. But yeah, I had some funny stuff, and I had stuff even with not that long ago. We had to the company culture. We had a break in right before we bought our building. Now it's only 5 years ago. 7 a.m. utility truck. We had like one of those ATT style utility trucks, DT trucks that our carpenter had his tools in. Young guy runs into the office. We had a meeting going on and says, "Someone's breaking into Steve's truck." So I get up, and it was about this time of year. It was like March, and the snow melt had kind of refroze, in the parking lot. So one of our guys, Lou, God bless Lou, decides, although Lou, couldn't beat his way out of a wet paper bag. No offense, Lou, but you know it. Decides he's going to run out there and stop the crime. Now, we have no
Crime
idea if this
Stoppers.
is 2 people or 10 people breaking into a truck, but remember, it's 7:30 a.m. It's daylight out. Lou goes out there and slips, comes down, shattered both bones in his arm, and it was just hanging like this and came in. We never caught the guys. But unfortunately, we doubled down the insurance claim because we had the tool theft. And then we had a work comp claim because Lou was at work when this happened and trying to play Superman or the Avengers and went out there to fight crime. But I think culturally, I have a lot of people that when I say like would take a bullet for the company, I don't really even say that lightly. I have people that like feel very, very strongly that if you talked ill of me or the company or what we do, you would get a reaction that would be very similar to a business owner's reaction, where they wear that on their sleeve and they take it with great pride what we do and what they do to make it good. We have guys that come back with stories of getting approached at Sherwin-Williams, and I have a young kid making $22 an hour, 20 years old, that just says, "Dude, you couldn't afford me, and I never work for you ever again. Don't talk to me. Don't even look at me. Do you see the name on my shirt? You see my truck? You're a piece of garbage," and just walks out. And the guys at the store are like, "Man, that was intense." And it's like, well, Johnny likes his job, I guess. So if he's going to just tell the guy to leave him alone. So they don't play well with being solicited either. We have a culture of that a little bit too. We're a pretty tight knit group of 90 or 100 folks.
Well, especially when you got that W-2. I mean, it's super duper important to make sure they're bought in, right? So, with
Yeah.
that being said, how would you expect your project manager to handle the guy off his rocker today?
Um, I think that they would do it pretty similar, though. I'll tell you today, they probably would pull out their phone and record it, which I think would probably have them on better behavior. If I had been recorded at that time, I think I probably would have been a little calmer. I think that they would handle it very similar. I think most of our field people would actually use a line similar to, "You thought that what was painted green is red, but now you can see it so good that it's thin. This doesn't make any sense." Or, "Would you like to go up there and see?" Or they would go up and take a video or a picture and say, "Do you see this? This is up close. It really is just a shadow." Because we do the right thing like all the time. And when we do something that is not perfect, we really come down hard on each other. So I think that they wear that with a badge of honor, that like, you're not going to challenge our integrity. We can make mistakes. We might spill paint and not clean it up all the way or something like that. Those little mistakes happen, but like, we're not going to do that and try to pass it off as good enough. And so I think that creates a level where they would handle it probably similar to how I would.
I love that. And I heard you typically, if you have some crew go to Susan's house 5 years ago, if you have that same crew, you're trying to send them back to her if she wants another like paint job this year?
Same crew, same estimator. Yeah, and it happens all the time. Even if we have a team that might physically be more gifted at putting on that trim or painting whatever they need done or doing the cabinets, if the crew that was there last can reasonably execute it, we're going to send the same team, because if we send anybody else, they're going to think they got the fill in or the B team, even if it's a cabinet specialist, and they might do a better, faster job. But Susie loves Mike and she loves Tom, and she doesn't want to see anyone else. And so in trades, tenure's tough in employment in general right now. We have people that have been here over a decade, and a ton of people have been here over 7, 8 years. So we get that quite a bit, where they just want the same guys. They want to catch up and find out, do you have kids yet? Cause you were getting married at the last project. Somebody asked me, gosh, I think this was just a week ago, and I've said this before, but what is my biggest, most prideful moment? And it's the amount of folks we have having kids, buying a home, buying a second home, getting married. Last year, between those four kind of segments, I think we had about 18 people go through one of those life events with us. It tells me I know that we're paying them well. I also use the parking lot as kind of a gauge. What is the quality of people's cars? Can they get to work safely, or do they have something that breaks down all the time? Is like an unofficial KPI of like, are we doing the right thing? That I think gives me a more realistic view than if I look at our 401k and see what are people investing. It's fine. It's a number, and there's some indication as to, if we're doing the right stuff with that. But are they doing the life events? Do they feel comfortable enough with me at the helm to buy a house at 22 years old? And a lot of them do. And if they don't, we kind of coach them up and tell them they're being ridiculous. You make plenty of money. Don't buy a motorcycle. Don't rent an apartment. Buy a home. Get a roommate or two. Have your roommates live there for 2 years, kick them out, find a decent woman and move in, and do this the right way. You'll be light years ahead. And our staff that's receptive to that little bit of adulting and sometimes not so gentle guidance, those are the guys that just bought their second house.
Yeah.
And they're on their second kid, and they're happier than hell to do it, but trying to coach them up with some life things. I think that's something I still do an awful lot of at the company. When you ask, like, I don't have like day-to-day duties. I try to get about a dozen of those type of touch points in, and every single day. I don't chart it, but I just mentally am kind of keeping track, so I know what's going on with people and I have a finger on that pulse.
So you're the company's therapist.
A little bit. It's interesting because I feel like we're about at the size that we could probably hire a therapist. And if we could just push people, through their last little bit of mental demons and get them locked in and focus, we could pay that salary and probably see an ROI in terms of production, because people would be happier and, more stable mentally and feel good about what they're doing. So we've joked about that. I have a friend who's actually a psychologist and has joked about coming on board with us. And I said, I think I'm almost there where I could justify the expense, but it's not that we have head cases, but people use the term head trash, right? People have head trash, and it's like, no, you just kind of might need to talk through this for a little bit, and then you're going to be better at work and better at home, and that may be financially worth it, where I could put that in like a marketing expense and see it come out the end, production. So
would you force everyone to have like a monthly meeting?
Yeah, I don't know about that. But we meet an awful lot. I'll tell you, our staff in their groups meet an awful lot. We have a really good pulse as to exactly what's going on with people at home, because most problems that we see are totally not work related. It's stress at home, sick kid, really sick kid, problems with the marriage, problems financially that maybe happened 10 years before they even came on board, but something's caught up to them. And we deal with an awful lot of that stuff.
Yeah, and I love how your answer to like what you're most proud of like has stayed the same. I asked you that over the summer, and that was the exact answer you gave.
Yeah,
you just absolutely like you're a caretaker. Like you love helping people, you really do.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wouldn't have thought that, and I wouldn't have thought I was a teacher. So I'm the son of two teachers in education, and I didn't think that was really my identity, but. As I've matured and stopped throwing buckets of mud at people, I've learned there's other ways I can probably fix that problem, that for the spilled paint in the trailer or the spilled paint in the van or something like that. And a lot of what we do, like with our pay system, is kind of designed around that. Our DMs are responsible for their vehicles. So if we're going to go sell a vehicle and they've trashed it, they're getting less money than they would have if they took care of it. That is on them to bear. I don't have to be as mad if there's a tear in a seat or some paint that got spilled in the back. I mean, it still bothers me, because we spend a lot on our vehicles, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to get, $4,000 instead of 6,000 when we go to sell that car and buy a new van for themselves. And really, if they're at a bonus tipping point, that might be $2,000 immediately out of their pocket, the way the math works.
A lot of accountability.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not oppressive, but it's kind of always present. Like we're not curing cancer, we're not doing surgery. What we do is dirty by trade. So there's a give and take of like, how do we want van condition, tool condition to be, for sure. But if you institutionalize it, I think then you don't have to micromanage it, and nothing de-energizes me worse than micromanaging stuff. You know.
Speaking of micromanaging, so like when you started making that transition of like, okay, no longer admin, so you're not the voice picking up the phone,
Mm.
no longer salesperson, you're not the person going and saying, "Hi, McFarland Painting,"
Mhm.
no longer the project manager. Like, I'm sure you had customers that were from before that was like, "Where's John? Where's John?" So
Mm.
how did you handle that transition, and like what would you tell those clients?
Yeah, still have that a little bit. We still have people that I physically worked for 15 years ago that are wondering if I'll come out and do the estimate. I've not done an estimate of any serious regard in 4 years, five
Wow.
years. Um, how we explained it may not be correct, but we generally said, wasn't it nice to have us answer the phone? Would you like an exact time? There's no way that John can answer the phone, set your estimate when you're available, show up when you're available, give you the quote, same day or next day, and then start your project and run any kind of company. And so the fact that we answered the phone, and we always answer the phone on one ring, right? If you call us between 7:30 and 5 p.m., 5 days a week, you get a live body. Right now, it's not a phone on a dash, and it hasn't been that way in 14 years. Um, there's a cost to that. And the cost is I can't do it. You know what I mean? So I'm not responding to all of those calls and things like that. And honestly, and then we started to joke a little bit, like, you don't want me to paint your house anymore. I'm rusty as hell. I wasn't frankly even that great at it when it was only me running jobs. Our people now are way, and I tell them this on a regular basis, like they're way better than what I did. They just are. Speed, efficiency, cleanliness, attention to detail. I gave people a nice process. They felt really good when I was there. We had a great time. But in terms of final offering, like we're light years ahead of where we were when I was my hands on the tools. I don't think that was my strongest suit, was being the guy on the tools. I think it's designing systems so that others can provide a little more specialized value at the estimate, on the phone in the office, on the tools with the follow-up. Those are all different segments. And generally the same person's not very good at all of them. And so business owners got to kind of figure out, what are you the worst at, or what do you want to offload the first? And that may be sales, that may be operations, it may be admin stuff, but one of those three is going to be your first kind of, oh my gosh, how do I afford this person? I did this myself. It's like buying that house. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can't afford it today. So you better make it work to be able to afford them.
Yeah, I've heard this saying a lot. Burn the
Yeah.
boats. That way you could take the island, right?
You have to. You have to. If you have a way out or you're going in half-assed, I will tell you it won't work. Because the person you'll attract with that attitude as a leader is not going to be the person you need to trust when you're handing over check deposits or phone calls or customer input or in-home sales. Like if you're half in and half out on the whole process, they're going to sniff that out.
Man, I love that.
You know?
Denzel Washington says, "I'd rather fall forward. I don't want to fall backwards.
Yeah,
I don't want
you're
anything to fall back on. I want to fall forward."
100%. And I felt strongly at that time about that we could find ways to tell customers, you don't need me. You want a better version of us. And it doesn't go smooth all the time. Some people still push back. I mean, for a little while there, if it was a really particular certain person, I still went on those estimates. But I did it because I didn't think it was fair to maybe send another guy, send Larry to it, because they just weren't going to give him a fair shake. It was kind of like if we had a guys do the project and they wanted another project, we really need to send the same people back. I felt like it would be impossible to win if I didn't just bite the bullet, but you wean off that pretty quick. I mean, that was about a year or two where I did a few that I just felt like, this is not worth disenfranchising this client. I will just go, no big deal.
So say you go back 15 years, would you then tell yourself like, I am the best painter?
No, I think I knew I wasn't, I think I knew what my value is. I just didn't have any idea how to functionally work my way out of it or set that up. That was a little bit of trial and error. And until we did the performance pay system, it's kind of always fighting an uphill battle. We pay for Cliff Notes version, this pretty well, but similar to a subcontract type of pay rate where you're incentivized to not go to the store and not mess around and not take excessive breaks. When we did that, which is about 14 years ago now, life became a lot simpler because I didn't need to have stupid conversations with somebody that wanted 50 cents an hour. I said, fantastic. Don't let me see you go over to Speedway and buy your Monster Energy and your crappy breakfast sandwich, and it will pay you $2 more an hour today. And you won't spend $10 at the gas station. So it's going to continue to compound. Like, let's do that, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, buy your 10-pack of Zens, beforehand.
Exactly. You get in the truck, you're going, and then you got a passenger, right, going to a job site. So now you're paying that guy's time while you run in to grab stuff. Our pay system fixes that. You can do that for it, not me.
I heard you said you kind of had you sold this dream to one guy, and then it kind of radiated out.
Yeah, Aaron did, and I mean, honestly, I've never taken credit for the idea. The idea was Aaron's. And I was paying him well. He said, "Hey, man, I don't have a problem with what you're paying me. I just think there's a better way to do this and maybe pay me more money. Can you figure out how much you would want to pay me per job?" Okay, sounds good. So we did that with Aaron for a couple weeks. We kept everyone out of it. The other crews and guys wanted into it. We told them how much more Aaron was making. And I said, if you flip the switch, we're all flipping and we're never going back. And their concern was that we would work more hours and I'd be more of a taskmaster and just oppressive to them and go, go, go. What we found is our working hours actually reduced. The guys were working 55 to 60 hours a week because they love that paycheck of X amount of thousands of dollars. When you could pay them X amount of thousands of dollars, miraculously, they were able to do that in 48 hours.
Wait, you guys get paid?
Yeah, they get paid, believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the working hours shrunk and everyone was happier. And I didn't need to worry about if you were out of the shop on time or you got there a little later, these other things. Like, the culture fixed it. You're showing up late, we're going to take you out of the bonus system for that week. That probably cost you $250. And they'll tell you, Brandon, you're paying a $250 idiot tax this week. We have a good bonus. We're working on a nice bonus. You might want to go buy a $20 alarm, dude.
Oh,
So decide to or not. It doesn't usually take that long before people are like, yeah, you're right. This adulting thing is probably worth doing. I'm going to lock in and get a second backup alarm or move my phone across the room. So I got to actually put my feet on the floor and touch grass to turn it off. I'm not just rolling over and doing this. And if it doesn't work, then they're the wrong fit and they work themselves out. And it's not even an offense. We're a different culture. And I think that's one thing that I can't overstate. There are cultures throughout businesses and just painting in our area that, Joe Finch at that event, Joe Finch is a craftsman. I couldn't carry his drop cloths. That guy doing high gloss stuff. That's not me. That's not my offerings. That's not my people. Two totally different businesses. Yes, we're both painters in Metro Detroit. That's about where the similarities stop. He's just a totally different animal than I am. And that's good. So some people that want that environment may not work for me and vice versa. And I stopped trying to have everyone fit into our system a few years back, where I just felt like this would work for anybody. It will not. It will not.
So how have you created this funnel of people coming to you? Because I imagine a lot of people just come to you for the job at this point.
We get a decent amount. I try to stay out there and do conversations with guys that are 1 or 2 man shows that are struggling. And I do it under the guise of like, I'm just going to talk to you because I went through this. I'm not trying to give you horror stories or what ifs, but give them an outlet. And there's probably 8 of those guys that have come on board with us and said, you know what? Yeah, I have no work-life balance. The evening estimates stink. I hate typing on Sunday. My wife's going to kill me. This is not working. I'm not happy. I'm not making any money. And then we just wait. And I wait for them to really, really want out of it and then say, I can fix those problems, but it's not going to be your name on the van. And if you can get over that. And so out of the 11 or 12 we have in the building now, we had one that came on, worked 5 months, and then decided he wanted to go back out on his own. I actually just saw he's gotten out of painting and now he's working for a large company doing door-to-door sales of windows and solar systems. Probably wouldn't have been a fit regardless of if he would have stuck or not, because if he wasn't that into making it work himself, he's not going to be that into making it work for me. Great human being, wrong company for him.
So do you almost have them like sign like essentially like a subcontractor agreement, even though it's not a subcontractor agreement if they're coming on, but like a non-compete or
That we
something?
have a standard non-compete. I mean, they're not generally enforceable. It doesn't mean they can't go back and start their own paint company when they leave us. That's not the way those are written. It's really just taking our information. So taking our written SOPs, taking client contact information and things like that. That's about all that's enforceable in the state of Michigan. So they sign that and we pay them, 3% of revenue off of every job they refer in. So, a $5,000, $6,000 average job, they're making a couple $100 by not doing the estimate, not marketing, not having even run the project. It can be passive income. And what you find if you got people that really let go of the ego and look at their numbers for a minute. We had a guy out of Plymouth who came on board a few months back, ran his numbers. He was very honest with me at our second meeting. I knew him for about a year and a half about what his gross revenue actually was. And I said, do you know what you're actually taking in? I'm not the IRS, but like, do you know how much your books are soft and where you might? And I said, okay, like what does a typical work week look like for you? Ran the math and he was making $15 an hour.
So with you, most of these guys,
I don't have
once
one guy at $15 an hour. And I haven't in a couple of years, a few years. All right. Not even a summer apprentice is not $15 an hour anymore. He had all the liability of owning it. He was the only estimator. He was the only project manager. He had some guys. He was working 60 hours a week. And I said, dude, you could get paid $15 an hour on paper with me. And just with your time and a half overtime, you'd make another 12 grand next year and not have any of the stress and the headache. Those guys generally and girls work well with us because they understand how to like live in an accountable world like it was their own. But they're often not always equipped to like get through all of the stress and the headaches and the balance of things. And that's why most of these businesses fail is they're better at operations or they're better at sales or they're better at the admin stuff. They're really not unicorns that do all three well. And sometimes they don't give themselves enough time to get hired into those spots, or they're nervous and they don't hire those people. And then they fail and they have nothing, and that's a tougher person to onboard. It's better if it's somebody who's just kind of sick of the rat race, but still likes aspects of the trade. Once they've gone through a catastrophic failure, they're tough to employ. If they've really been beaten up by the world, there's some animosity there that they might not be a good employee for a year or two.
So when you're talking to these guys, what are those not horror stories that you're telling them, but like what are you telling them to kind of get them to buy into your dream?
But yeah, I mean, so we have benefits. We have company provided vehicles, and they're all new. Our oldest van is 6 years old. We have the best and update equipment. We provide uniforms. We have 401k. We have short-term, long-term disability insurance. We have health insurance, vision, dental. Other companies in our area that have those things, I haven't met one. So we're already in a very, very narrow, shallow pond in Michigan. We're in an incredibly shallow pond nationwide. I don't know that there's a dozen companies that have that stuff nationwide, to be honest with you. Now, some of those things don't matter that much if my van's a little newer or older, except there's some status to driving in a nice vehicle. Our pay system is a kind of another bailout. That, okay, you're not capped. This isn't some very de-energizing hourly model. But I think the thing that they're most motivated by is that work-life balance. I will get after you if you send an email or a text at 6 p.m. That stuff goes off. You're done, you're home. It only indicates to me you screwed up at 8 a.m. by not calling the client and telling him, here's the plan for tomorrow, and you're making up using Weave and texting at 6:30. We'll see it, and I'm going to blast you. I'm going to go and crawl right up your ass and say, what are you doing? Well, I had to let them know. Yeah, you did. Sounds like that was a Friday before phone call.
Yeah.
Why are we calling on Tuesday when you're showing up Wednesday?
Do you have anybody
Yeah.
that like just truly just wants to put in those hours, like your sales reps or something like that? That
Not
might work?
that much. No, it's amazing. Regardless of compensation, about 50 hours a week, people can make enough money. They don't need more. And so we target about 45 a week in our busy season for our field staff. We go above that, but we really don't see anybody going over 50. If they want to work nights and weekends, we generally have more people offering to give those up because we don't do a huge volume of them. And the evenings and nights pay at a larger percentage than base pay. So it's not like just time and a half. It's kind of time and a half plus or 2.5 times their normal kind of base expected wage. And so the institution fixes that. You get people that can turn off their phone. And if you need to make $3,000 a paycheck to be happy and provide the life you want to provide your family and do the things you want to do, Fantastic. Let's work backwards and figure out what your production needs to look like. Can you do that by yourself? Do you need to be in charge of a person or two on a job site? Can you run a big team? The nice thing about so many people and options is we have options.
Yeah.
We have people that work really, really good by themselves with one person, and you put four people in a house with them and it goes to shit. They don't lead well that way. They get too in the nitty gritty. They don't step back. And I use the term like directing and managing from the sidewalk. They're not looking at it macroeconomically. They're down in the weeds. They're a great painter. They can probably make $35, $40 an hour physically just painting by themselves. You put them in a management role and they can't have jobs come back well enough to pay them 25 or 30. It's the wrong person, wrong seat. That's Jim Collins' book, right? So we try to have enough opportunities that we can stage things and try people and test and measure and say, hey, I know you want to run a big team. Do you want, back to me, right? Do you want to run a big team or do you want to make more money? Because right now those are not going to intersect. They might eventually. We might be able to train you up on running a team and being firm and accountable and being a great leader and manager. But that's probably a 12-month. And if you're good to do that and you're locked in, we'll support you and we'll roll this out. But it's probably going to cost you some income as you learn that. You are doing a job that you're not naturally gifted at. There's a cost to that.
Well, like for example, so you bought that business, and I believe you brought the owner on.
Mm-hmm.
So as owners, I believe we were all always trying to raise the bar, go to the next level. When she came on, do you notice like more after hours or something work on her end because she's also trying to build her legacy with you like as well? Or
Fantastic. And yes, bad habits, writing quotes at midnight. Because we're still on what's been, 8 months. We're still unworking some of that hardwiring a little bit. Don't need to do that here. There's plenty of work time. Now, in this case, she's got 5 kids, in young kids, teenagers to like 8, I believe is the breakdown. That's busy mom. Husband works, right? That's busy mom. So if they're woefully, willingly deferring tasks at noon to midnight, because they got to pick up a sick kid at school, they have to do something else. Fantastic, viable. We back that, family first. Let's go. If they're not able to balance stuff and they feel like they have to work at midnight, maybe we're screwed up. Maybe we're not setting up for success. Maybe we're going on too many. They're in sales, right? Lauren's in sales. Maybe they're going on too many terrible, crappy leads, and there's a marketing problem. And so to get her volume of sales where it needs to be, we're backfilling with too much garbage. And so we would look at that. But reworking some of those old patterns from a business owner is one of the biggest challenges I've had with her. Sales, 10 out of 10. Operations, business owner, very average. Not bad, just very average. Peeling the fingers back off operations and getting her busy enough that she's out of operations, we're both happier. Our line around the office is always get her out and get her selling something. Everyone, the operations guys, she's happier. Front office is happier. Everyone wins. It's a big kumbaya moment. If she's a little slow, they do what all owners do, just kind of start meddling around. Let me see what I can get into. And let me start talking guys and see what's going on with this
new AI prompt. And
yeah, it's just, squirrel, right? I'm going this way. But the success in that has been providing a lot of that solace. She's very appreciative of what the company can provide. She's definitely bought in, and we've held up our end of the bargain. Both of us have, her and I, to like this is where we're going to balance each other out. I want some fire and piss and vinegar on the sales side and a little more go get them, because our sales team is generally passive and kind of consultative and low pressure, which is good for most of the time. It's what I want my people to be. But there's also that B or B plus in terms of income is probably good enough. I want somebody a little more feisty in the room. And we got her, and we have another guy we brought from operations that is that way a little bit too. They're shaking that up in that estimating room, which is really nice. But yeah, those habits, breaking those habits, it's hard. That's why I don't have a computer at home. That's my solution. I probably have to take her laptop and it will get better. Lock it in a case at work, at the office out there, and just forget it.
I love that. Do you find yourself ever feeling like you've made it to the bar that you're setting, or you make it there and then you're like, well, it's actually one higher now?
No, never. windshield is way bigger than rear view mirror. I am one of my big, massive failures in life is not smelling the roses for sure. I just don't do it well. I don't provide positive affirmations when people do stuff well all the time. It's not that I don't appreciate the hell out of it. It's just that I'm kind of like on to the next thing already. Um, no, we're not even close, and you and I kind of talked and get to know each other. And like, that's why I appreciate relationships with you and others like you is I don't want to be the content blue blood has been who just kept doing the same thing. So you get these younger minds, younger people, newer at it that have an energy. Um, that's why I hang out with you. I'm trying to strip some of that energy and vibe and get a little bit of juice back, because you do lose it, and you get disconnected and you stop doing things that made us us. And so I think that's the value of having kind of a diverse friend group that you can get something out of somebody who feels like, and you've said this, I don't know what I could possibly offer you. No, when you met with Elizabeth and did stuff and gave us ideas, that was next level. We needed that injection. Elizabeth, who's younger than you by quite a bit, was guilty, who runs our marketing, was very guilty of being stuck in our ways. This is just how we've done it, why we do it. And it took us to 8 figures is not going to take us to 9 figures. What got us to our first million didn't get us to 7 or 8 either. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Times change, marketing changes, people change, all this stuff changes. We need new ideas, and I don't think there's a better place to get that than people that I like and respect that are running. I'm not going to call it smaller companies. They're younger. Your company is younger. It's not that different than ours. It's just adolescent. You know what I mean? It hasn't cut all the cords yet. And it's not that you're doing anything wrong. But there's a hell of a lot we can learn from that so that we don't become the dinosaur.
Well, let me just say there's a lot that I'm doing wrong. Let me just be honest. I think that any business owner that has a little bit of the ego checked will be honest and say,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's something that you're thinking of that you're like, now that we've been talking, it's like, well, a little bit of like self check, like, all right, is our production like, is there one little gap, or like, is my salespeople are my salespeople not taking enough notes, like whatever it may be, right?
Every day, dozens of them. And I think that's the benefit of doing a podcast or having a discussion or going to, PCA Expo or Slavic's retreat is you end up kind of checking your shit.
Yeah.
Like, is how I'm saying it functionally how we're doing it. Generally, we're pretty close. Like I'm not lying. Like we are who we are, good, bad, or indifferent. But I come back and I'm like, I'm explaining it this way, but I think that's the way that this was a year or two ago. I think we've gotten soft on this. Like we need to refocus on selling faster and not taking 24 hours to give an estimate if it doesn't require it, or whatever revelation comes up in a discussion where it's like, this is bullshit. Like I'm saying we're this way, but we're not all the way that way. And I really would like to be able to tell this story 15 different times to 15 different people and have it be exactly at my standard at the level we expect. And, I think that these type of things allow you to check that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even just going to the Slavic event, it's not like there's any like life changing huzzah
Mm,
silver bullet, but it's just like a lot of little things that you're like humbling. I mean, when I stepped up to do my ask, that wasn't even what I was thinking about asking,
yeah.
right? And it's cool going and seeing even somebody like you, 12 times the size, 10 whatever it may
Mm.
be, like massive company and just a lot more mature and things, like still have questions to ask, even and gaining something from me. Like I would never have expected that. And it's
Yeah.
like,
I think helping people workshop their own problems is probably one of the easiest ways to diagnose your own. You know what I mean? Just have a conversation back and forth and confirm, like, do I do it as good as I just explained it? Probably not. So, and admit that and say, you know what? I'm going to go back and look at this too.
you know how humbling it was watching your team take and smoke me out of the water with everything I like taught like Elizabeth. I'm like, here, go do this, and then they do it better, and I'm like,
Maybe I
okay,
should have given him worse secrets.
no, 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 because I would something the guy who taught me how to paint was, oh, you see all these guys, they're a bunch of ainers, they ain't doing shit,
Mm,
right? We're painters, blah blah blah. And ever since I've switched that mindset away from that, because like I mean the wrong advice from the right person can really fuck you up.
yep.
Like it really can. And I used to think everybody was my competition, all this, but I've actually gotten the most from having conversations like this, going out there. I mean, Elizabeth gave me some great game too.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of the things that she said, and I'm sure we're about to start seeing that ROI from it.
Right.
And even if not, like just like you said, that that humbling experience of like, am I doing it as good as I said I was? Like, because ultimately, like, yeah, I'm doing it, but is each story as like as good as it could be?
Mhm.
No, I could spend a little bit more time on this and make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um, which leads me to something else I really wanted to ask. Like, opportunities seem like they just flood to you. I mean, they just literally like flood to you. How do you open up the window to let them come in?
I don't know if they flood to me. I mean, I spend time in terms of trying to network with business owners that might be good fits to take on management roles at the company. That's a pipeline. I mean, I have people that I talked to. This last one that joined, it took me 2.5 years. Just a very casual relationship before they were like, you know what, you're right. I know this now. This is not fun. It's not me. My heart's not in it. My mind's not in it. But I love painting and I'm damn good at it. Like, is this still available? Um, I think it's making sure you have time and boundaries so you have capacity to be open to things. I'm doing this morning, no big deal. I mean, this is worthwhile to me. This was blocked. My team knows not to call me, not to text me during this. Same thing with Nick's retreat or PCA Expo or family vacation. Um, I don't receive a phone call or text during those things from the company. And I have not since Chris started with me 12 years ago. Zero.
Wow.
I got one email one time from a newer front desk person who Chris made cry. Talk about culture. Chris is a 65, very unassuming, does yoga, mostly a vegetarian, um, not not physically intimidating. Found out that our newer front desk person sent me an email or copied me on an email and dressed her down and made her cry because that was Chris's badge of honor that no one does that when he's gone. We're all adults. We can all handle this. And she wore that really too much like a badge of honor because this young woman didn't need to cry over it. But Chris felt really strongly. And this is last year, within last year, probably October. So I think I do things like that to make sure I have time to do things like this because this jazzes me up. This energizes me. I got another event I'm going to wearing a kilt later today, right? That's going to be a little stuffier and a little different, but that's more important for the business success. These things are important for like John's success and my mental state and my happiness doing this stuff. So thank you for giving me that.
Dude, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I think we're almost out of time. You got a busy schedule, so I really appreciate you like kind of coming together and making time for this.
Yeah.
Something I'll leave you off with is the guy you threw the mud tub at still worth you? Or?
No, he's not. But he's a fantastic friend of mine. We hang out every weekend. Now that we're older, the 6 years of age difference isn't that much at all. And he's my camping buddy. We go camping all the time. He'd be a funny interview because he had stories. He was on the phone well before his wife, Friday afternoon was just, texting females and trying to set up his Friday evening dates. I also threw his phone off of a lift one time. Same guy locked his cell phone in my truck when we went to work because I'd turn around and he'd have it out of his tool belt on it. And this is before phones were very advanced. So I think it was a Motorola Razor I launched off a lift. And
Probably survived.
it survived. There's a big crater in the ground. But yeah, great friends.
That's what took out the dinosaurs.
One of my best
isn't it?
friends, one of my top best friends without a doubt, but I was 24 and he was a dipshit 18-year-old. And that was the dynamic.
So
in
he
my
probably
mind.
can't go into Home Depot into like the drywall section anymore, can he?
Yeah, he has PTSD. He just twitches when he walks by buckets of mud.
That is hilarious,
Yeah.
man. Well, again, John, thank you so much for being on. And if anybody really enjoyed this conversation, enjoyed how deep we got, it wasn't all just about business. It's about laughs. It's about, learning why somebody does something. Go ahead and click that subscribe button, follow along, leave a comment, do whatever you can do. Help this channel grow. And again, thank you, John, for being on Two Coats Deep. We'll see
Thanks,
you guys
Brandon.
next week.
Appreciate it, man.